Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Brad, and today I want to talk about the lack of advice for men. And the truth is, what I've experienced anecdotally within my life and I've observed in the world is the lack of nuanced and really effective advice for men and boys, of course, growing up all the way through men. Most advice that's given to men in particular is very, very lazy advice, non-nuanced, and it's not helpful. For instance, anytime that a man may have emotional issues, or he feels like maybe school isn't working out for him, or his job, or his marriage, usually the response that's given to most men is just a simple, lazy answer. It's mostly along the lines of, oh, just man up and take it. Stop complaining. Be grateful for what you have. Essentially, it's just stuff your feelings back down and completely ignore them. And the fact of the matter is most people that I see, they grow up not really having a nuanced understanding of themselves, the way that they deal with the world around them, the way that they want to develop themselves, the life that they want to live, the way that they want to interact with humanity. Most people have a very simplistic view of themselves and the world. And I'd really like to play a part in changing that to some degree. Essentially, what I think about it is that, obviously human beings are very complex, and the way that they feel and the way that they experience life and their ideas, their individual ideas that come from maybe their soul or their environment, are very unique and they're very nuanced. So they need to be treated as such. Um, Most advice that I've seen from men is so simplistic and lazy, it's really insane. Even within the self-help sphere, there can be a lot of very simplistic advice that isn't really helpful in a lot of ways. However, there are really excellent teachers out there. One of my favorite teachers who really has a lot of great frames and understandings for men and women is Anthony Robbins. He's, to me, just a angel. The guy is absolutely amazing at what he does, and he is amazing. He really does have a lot of great solutions and understandings and frames for men and women to help get through their life. But the problem is that to be able to really hear what somebody is saying and apply the lessons that they're talking about, you can't really be ready to apply the lessons of Anthony Robbins until you're truly ready. Until you're ready to hear it and make the change, you cannot really hear it. Most people just shut it out. Um, and that is because they've had this fake, very superficial worldview instilled in them. Um, and that was definitely my experience too. I had a lot of questions about why things were the way that they were, and when I was growing up, I was just told to shut up. Everybody told me to shut up, and I see that pretty much across the spectrum. Just everybody is just telling each other to just shut up, don't think about it, suppress your emotions, suppress your feelings about it. Your feeling, especially men. To be fair, men really get suppressed and they really get shut down hard and they get told to shut up a lot. And I think that that is a real problem. So, what are the solutions to this overall problem of a lack of depth? That's really what it is. This is just a lack of looking at the actual solution to the problem and getting to the root of the problem. For instance, addiction. Um, I've had problems with addiction. I used to identify as a drug addict. I don't identify with that anymore. I don't identify as a recovering drug addict. Obviously, I'm not. I don't have those major problems today. I have different problems which I address, but I don't have that problem anymore. And a big part of what caused me to heal from that in a lot of ways was looking at my life from many different angles and also really going deep as to why I felt compelled to use drugs. What was it about it? And for me personally, it took a lot of self-reflection, and I'll be very transparent with you. A lot of it was, it's this big mush of bad beliefs. It was where it was a cry for attention, where I wanted somebody to love me and notice me and care about me and respect me. I thought that it was also attractive to do drugs. I thought that, that rebellious thing was something that was attractive. I also thought that, to gain acceptance from women. And I also thought that, it would calm me down so I would be more of an attractive person. Like I was too intense, and I heard that pot makes you calm down. So I used to try and do it for that reason. And then once I got into the cycle of doing it, it became something that was an identity for me. It became a way for me to be significant and have people notice me and have people respect me because, I was the only one taking action selling weed in my school. So it became an identity for me, and it became a source of significance, and people respected me and so on and so forth. So those were the real reasons I was using. I wasn't necessarily using because there was something so wrong with me. And then later on when I used, it was something else. And, you can apply that deep thought into any layer, into any problem in your life. For instance, if you have problems within relationships and relationships become something that, maybe you're codependent, maybe, the person you're with is really abusive and nasty and your relationship is horrible, but you can't set boundaries with them because you feel like powerless in that situation. You feel like you can't tell them not to do that anymore or you'll leave and whatever. And, I had that problem too. And in order to get over that problem, which I ultimately did, again, what was the advice? What were the advisements of people? For instance, today I had to bury one of like a great friend of mine. He died of cancer and he was young, and it was absolutely heartbreaking. And I reached out to like some family, and I'm like, yeah, I just got back from his funeral. It was horrible. And I just keep putting the olive branch out there for them to take the bait and be there to support, even though I know that they won't. And the bit of advice that I got was one text after this person had ignored several of my texts about this topic, like enjoy your life and just move on and just be glad that you have your life. When in actuality, there's a lot of depth that needs to go into analyzing that problem, and basically the overall cure to this problem is that we have to stop being so afraid of nuance and subtlety and coaching and helping each other and mentoring each other. This is a society that completely just removed all aspects of a mature masculine role model in people's lives that can come in and figure out solutions to their problems and speak to them about what's going on and then go deep with it and figure out why you may feel that way or why you may do the things that you do, and then hold you accountable to make the change so that you can improve those faulty thinking, the stinking thinking, as they call it in NA, or like the bad thought patterns, the negative thought loops, so on and so forth, bad behavioral patterns. That's what traditionally dads did. And there's just not any more of that. I went through my entire life without any sort of real guidance. And actually, that's what hurts so much about my friend passing, is that I met him when I was sent to rehab, and he was, that to me. He was one of the few people in my life that were that to me. I could count how many of those guys were like that to me on my one hand. I had one teacher in 8th grade. I had my friend who I'm referring to. I had I don't know, man. There were just like only a very few amount of people. There was a very small number of people who actually took the time to try to mentor me or proactively help me with my inner problems. You know, actually, one of them is somebody who I paid to see a shrink. I paid to see a therapist, and I'd seen many therapists, but this one was one that finally worked out. He's an older man. He's trained in this, and he actually has real solutions, and he cares about me and my problems. He'll take my calls any time of the day, and he'll talk to me for 15 minutes any day, anytime I have a problem, and then I'll go and I'll work things out with him. But there just isn't any of that, and essentially what you have is you have a society of incredibly unconscious people who don't think about who don't think deeply about why they're doing what they're doing, how to regroup and maybe retool and change directions with the way that they're going. They don't think about these things because they don't have anybody to kind of help them correct course. And it's an epidemic, man. It's been around a long, long time. You just don't have that kind of guiding masculine force. I mean, it could be a woman too. A woman can definitely help you, of course. But I'm just saying the point is that it's very rare to have that. I reflect on my life, and I have had no guidance, like practically damn near no guidance. The only guidance that I had came from audiobooks and PDFs and blogs and myself, and that was really hard, man. That was really, really, really fucking hard because no man is an island, and you can't. People who say like, "Oh yeah, I did it myself." No, you didn't. It's impossible to do anything amazing by yourself. The truth is that we stand on the shoulders of giants, and we stand on the accomplishments of amazing people who came before us. That's what allows us to be successful, and that's another problem in our society is that people just don't respect the past. They don't respect the people who came before them and created this amazing life for them to be able to have a platform and do amazing things. So, the crux of it is like if you know somebody who's young or somebody who's struggling, even a friend, I'm at a point in my life where the only people that I allow around me are people who will, when I tell them about something, they'll listen. The majority of people, when I tell them about, say, a problem that I'm having, an insecurity, a business idea, something I'm fired up about, they will just lazily brush it aside and keep browsing Instagram for memes or some other inconsequential thing. They're more interested in looking at Black Panther than they are, helping their friend figure out his psychological, barriers or whatever. They're more interested in, you know, fucking virtue signaling about how righteous they are, as opposed to really asking themselves and helping others with the tough questions in life. And, Anthony Robbins said it the best. We are missing that depth. We don't have depth in our society anymore. We don't have any, there are no rites of passage for men, for instance, which is just so catastrophic. You have this whole generation of insecure, lost, confused, ungrounded men. And you have, women, on the other hand, just totally ungrounded as well. No accountability for them. Massively, massively, massively narcissistic. I mean, there was a woman today who almost hit me on my skateboard. I had to literally like dive off my skateboard to get out of the way of her running me over, and she just coldly just drove on by without, acknowledging. And truth is I see a lot of women nowadays with a very cold, narcissistic look in their eye, like just no humility. That's a big problem that I see with women. I see with men, they're very, very insecure and they're very lost. They're very ungrounded, and they'll pick fights and they'll chip away at other men. and then the women are just so overvalidated and so lost as well. Um, it's a society that needs order, and it needs depth, and it needs logic and reason and compassion, and it needs, a lot of the values that, Western society was founded on. It needs those values. We don't need any anarchy or radical Islamic values. No, the best values are the most refined, the most civilized values that are out there. We don't, it's funny, there's a big push for progressivism. It's not really progressive, it's progressivism. It's not refining civilization. There's a big difference. Uh, Refinement of civilization and a big part of being good comes down to rules and having rules and structure for yourself and the way that you behave and the things that you do and the things that you allow others to do. That was a quote that I watched a U.S. Navy SEAL talk about. Yes, Rob O'Neill, the guy who shot Osama bin Laden on SEAL Team 6. He said, he's like, yeah, we're the good guys. We have rules. We don't just go and engage enemies blindly. We don't just shoot first and ask questions later. We have protocols that we have to follow before we kill somebody, before we engage a target. And that is why we're the good guys. That's the truth, is that the Taliban and ISIS and Gaddafi when he was in power and Assad, what he's doing now, it's he just killed 100 people today in Syria. These people in Africa, all of these civil wars and the tribal wars that have gone on, Joseph Taylor and that guy General Butt Naked or whatever, the atrocities that they committed, like eating children's hearts, like just awful stuff. They have no rules. They like to pretend they have rules, but they don't have rules. The civilized have rules and discipline and structure. That's the thing. Say we are the ones who are good because we have power and we have rules. If the U.S. military wanted to, wipe these continents off the face of the fucking planet in a heartbeat without nuclear weapons, with just airstrikes, with just carpet bombing the shit out of these places. But we don't. These other countries, if they had that capability, they would do that to us. But they don't. So instead, we sacrifice hundreds of thousands of lives fighting these wars that people like Hillary Clinton make for her own personal enrichment. It's fucked up, but regardless, the lesson still stands: is that being a good person, you have power and you have rules, you have discipline, you have goodness, you do the right thing, and that's a big thing that we're missing. We have a society of very flaccid, very these people don't have a rite of passage. They don't have guidance. They don't have that depth. They don't have that connection that they're looking for. They just get a lazy answer and sent on their way. And it's very unfortunate. And I do hope that there will be a resurgence of depth and intimacy and connection. And it doesn't seem like that's the way that it's going in America right now, because we're so tribal at this point. We're literally self-segregating into different races and identity politics. Like, well, as a trans, queer, white, Jewish man, I feel that this, or as a black Christian woman, I feel this. It shouldn't be that way. It should not at all be that way. What that is that is a overinflated sense of importance, and that also is a lack of civil service, to the country and the world. People like that need to have their identities, their egos stripped. They need to go through some humbling experiences that really just cut them down to size. That's what they do in the military. They shave your head off, and then they scream at you for 6 months, and then they just put you through hell for 6 months, and then you come out the other side being a humbled, powerful person who can withstand adversity. And beyond that, you also can, dish out punishment because you've taken it. You become stronger through training, et cetera, et cetera. So, this is a long talk, but I do think that these thoughts are important. I do think that as a whole, we need to have more depth in the society. And, you know, the final message that I'll leave with you guys is that everybody has within them a kernel of greatness, amazingness, like leadership. And it is up to you. Tony Robbins says this as well, and I love this, and it's going to be my new motto. The keys to life are growth and giving, nurturing that seed and then giving it back. So the way that we grow is to put ourselves through challenging situations, to push ourselves to do things that are uncomfortable. The giving is just that. It's just giving it back, giving as much as you can, being abundant enough to say, hey, you know what? I don't need to hold on to this stuff. I don't need to hold on and just hold on to my little shekels. I can give them away. There's enough out there that I can get 10 times the amount of these little shekels if I just give them away. So with that said, I got to get going. I got to do my other work and stuff. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I understand that was a bit of a rant. I'll talk to you guys in a little bit.